Hey, good morning. So I want to talk about therapy. For me, the best kind of therapy is movement therapy. Over all my years of experiencing moving in my body and observing my mind, the toughest times in my body are when my mind is contracted. When I'm grappling with something, trying to wrap my mind around something, when I'm emotionally tight and resistant because something's going on and trying to stay in control of it, trying to stay in control of myself. And the best way to flip that whole story on its side, to open it up, to crack the shell of the egg open, is to start moving. Slowly, small movements. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be a big yoga practice that you're not qualified for. But start moving. Moving shifts your mind from logical interaction, logical observation of the story into some kind of magical alchemy that happens, starts to open the doors into the subconscious, into the unconscious, and then you start to receive the information from the movements, from inside the body, that are key ingredients to understanding what's going on in the superficial mental layer of just mind. I like to think of it as a pot plant. And you know, at the bottom of pot plants, they have the pots, they have those holes for the water to drain out. And so trying to deal with the mind only from the place of the mind is like digging in that pot to figure out the roots in the story of the plant that's growing in that pot. But the roots of that plant have already found those holes and they have gone way down into the earth below the pot. But you're digging inside the pot, looking for the answers inside the pot. So I wanted to give this analogy so that you can start to think about the stories that are in this containment of mind, and they create a reality that you're operating in, which is confined to these boundaries that are created by your mind. And in order to start to break the realities or loosen the soil of your stories, we have to break out of this pot. And the way to break out of this pot is by getting into your body. Again, I said it doesn't have to be huge movements, but I think a key ingredient is movement that you feel happy in. And so I like to start practices like this, movement therapy practices, lying on your back. Just lying on your back, letting the bones sink into the floor, letting you start to take pause, start to feel into the hardness of the floor, perhaps, the conflict between some bones and the floor, and then letting the bones melt into the floor and the muscles have to let go. Metaphysically, muscles represent mind and bones represent our deep core spiritual beliefs. So if your muscles are tight and in pain and resistant, you can hear where I'm going with this. The best way to open that up is to start to move. And so if you start to create on the floor gentle movements, this arm moving up and down, leaning on the floor, so you're not having to use any big muscles, especially for that movement. The big muscle is going to be this whole shoulder, maybe bicep, and that could be where most of the mind is sitting. And so you start to unwind and unravel, and the mind starts to relax. And you will dig past the boundaries of the superficial story and you'll go into a deeper story, which is why the pot container exists in the first place. Those deeper stories are deeper because at some point you decided they were scary, unsafe, untrustworthy, and so you buried them outside of the safe container of the mind that you're operating in today. But your mind knows that there's a whole bunch of stories outside of the safe container. And I think that there's a subtle vibration of frustration when the mind itself is digging, trying to find healing and growth and insight, looking inside this container. And it knows that the answer is just beyond the container, and it doesn't know how to get there. So the way to get there for me is by slowing down breath. Such a gift. We're so busy rushing, and that's also a function of the mind trying to keep you safely in this safe container that it created. We create this doing, this energy, this rushing, so that you aren't going to realize that all the stories that you're looking for are outside of the container. That's a whole other story around ego and protection and safety. And so if you pause, if you just do one thing today a whole lot slower than you've ever done it, see what happens. Or if you start to move in a yoga practice, and instead of doing a sun salute the way you've always done it, slow down. What happens when it takes 10 breaths to lift your arm up to the ceiling? It changes the alchemy of your brain. And so you can sit with yourself for 20 minutes, and it's a moving meditation, but you're not going to hit the walls of that container because you're moving. I love still meditation. I'm not saying that there's not a place for still meditation. I'm offering something to you if you're not a meditator. And if sitting still provokes the anxiety and the overactivity of the mind because you're bouncing against the walls of this container. And so if that's your experience of sitting still, or if you've been in therapy and you've spoken every situation that you're trying to figure out from every possible angle, but it hasn't dissolved, it hasn't resolved, it's because you're operating inside this container. So my invitation to you is to start moving with deliberate awareness slowly. So if you get up from your desk to go and make yourself a cup of tea or coffee, do it slowly. Do it slowly that all of your senses are ignited. They're like, what's happening? Why is this different? What are we doing? Your full attention comes to the here now, even though you're just making a cup of tea or coffee. And in this process, you're going to start to break the walls of that container to find the source of the stories, to get down into the root cause of whatever pain or suffering or conflict or unresolved feeling, muddiness that you can feel is in you, but you don't know where to find it because you've been looking in this container and it's outside. If you want to lie down on the hard floor, it's so lovely if it's hard, and we are creatures designed for comfort. And so we lie on a hard floor, and suddenly this mind in this container starts to say, wait a minute, you're not comfortable. And so I'm not comfortable with you not being comfortable. Get up and change it. Get up and fix it. So I'm challenging you to say, no, we're going to sit in this discomfort. I want to feel the hard floor against my bones because I want to break this container. And as you drop your bones into the hard floor, as you drop the muscles that are holding your bones, that are holding the form of who you identify as, can release. And suddenly there's space. This container opens. And in that space, the synapses require space from your body to your brain for your brain to be able to interpret what your body is holding. And in this space, you can start to perceive and receive the deeper stories that are fueling the stories that are constantly going around in your head. Those superficial stories are highlighting that there is something deeper. And if you keep saying the same stories over and over and over again, why? What is below? What is beneath? Where is the root? And so what we do with those superficial stories is like a weed. We pull it out of the ground. But with most weeds, their root system is deep and so strong that we'll end up breaking the plant just at the earth's surface. Relief. It's a temporary relief because we got rid of the visible irritation. But it's going to grow back. And it's going to maybe change its shape or form a little bit. So the storyline might change a color or might change a character, but the story remains exactly the same. We have to get down into the root and pull the stories up by their roots. And it feels scary. In fact, it feels terrifying, especially for the part of the mind that is very used to being in its container, where it has designed that container to create safety for you. But, and this is the thing that blows my mind, once you get to the root, there's a split second of maybe panic, terror, fear about what this root contains. But once it's out, there's an immense amount of delicious relief. And so I want you to lie on the floor in discomfort. I want you to start embracing discomfort. Not in an out of control way where you have completely lost it. In a safe way where the container can become a bigger container and a bigger container until you don't need a container. And so as you feel the bones drop into the floor and you feel your muscles that are holding your skeleton in the shape that is defining you, you start to allow prana, vital life force, stories to move in your body. And as you create these slow, small, supported movements, you start to unwind and unravel the stories that are in these places. And you don't need to necessarily relive the details of the story. You can feel it as an energy moving, and you can feel it as moving into that discomfort, into the grind and the sticky muddiness of a hip that doesn't want to fall into the floor when the leg is crossed over the midline, for example. And as you sit in that stickiness and you sit in that feeling and that discomfort is the container. And you allow gravity to pull. So what we've done is we've put the container on its side. And gravity starts to pull, and the container maybe can't support itself so much in this resting on a corner on its side, and so it falls into the ground. And you are released. You are released from these stories. One little story at a time, one little body part, shoulder, hip, ankle, toes, fingers, neck. And so it's safe because you're moving to the tempo, the rhythm, the possibility in your body. But you've increased the container so that you can start to let go of this closed sense of being stuck and bound inside these ropes that you put up. It's like the police yellow tag around a crime scene so that no one else can get there. And when you've taken yourself through a journey like this, and you get up from this journey, you will see, and I encourage you, take a before and an after photo, you will see something in your face. something in your eyes, sparkly eyes. You've let something go, something has shifted.